Alright, hello everyone. This is my review of Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Like I've said when I've talked about this book in other videos, this is my second time reading Mistborn. I'd read it once before my freshman year of high school, so 3 years ago at this point. And I had forgotten my book at home, and I'd lost my book, and so I had to find a book for school that day. And so I picked up Mistborn again, and jumped into it. And before I reread this for the second time, it was my third favorite Brandon Sanderson book, behind only Trust and Words of Radiance. And after reading it a second time, I can say, yep, sounds about right. That makes a lot of sense. I love Mistborn. The Final Empire is my favorite Mistborn book. Like I said, it's one of my favorite Brandon Sanderson Cosmere books. It's just great. I love heist stories. It's a subgenre or subcategory theme of book that I really enjoy, and Mistborn is a heist story. But just the characters are phenomenal. I love the magic system in Mistborn, and not only do I think the first time you read it, it's a magic system that's pretty easy to get used to, pretty easy to learn on the fly, and especially as you're talking about it, because you start to learn more about other magic systems on in Mistborn that aren't quite revealed. And when you're first reading it when you're reading it for the first time, it's a really awesome mystery. And when you're reading it for the second time, there's tons of cool Easter eggs that you now realize coming in later, and it's just super cool seeing it like that. And the characters are amazing. I love the original crew in this book. I think all of the characters are just so awesome, so much fun to read and just to hear their interactions. The plot is super well paced. I didn't actually remember how this book was paced the first time, and the pacing is really great. Like, it knows when to speed up, it knows when to speed down, and it kind of just brings you along for this really awesome ride throughout the entire story. And I think it's just paced really perfectly, in my opinion. The antagonists are amazing. They are huge. They're threatening. And just once again, it's just these little Easter eggs, these little clues and hints about more to come in Mistborn. Honestly, even here, there's a lot that you come back in later after reading more Cosmere that you get to. And I think all of those not only make for this really intriguing mystery that pulls you along, not only through the book, but through, more books after that, the first time you read it, but coming back the second time, it makes for a really enjoyable reread. Because there are some books that they're really great the first time, but honestly, there's no reason to reread it. I think for me at least, Babel is a big book in that respect. I just finished that book, and it's really good, but I don't have any desire to reread it. There's nothing that compels me to go back and reread Babel. But when it comes to Mistborn, there's a lot here that makes me want to even reread it a third time. There's a lot here that is really awesome to pick up on that second read through, and I really enjoyed that about this book. And there's very few flaws that I have for it, other than me not liking characters at some point because they're acting in character. There are points where Vin infuriates me, but she's acting as you would expect her to. So you can't really complain or gripe about that. So overall, this board's phenomenal. I really love this book. Pretty much from plot, from pacing, the story is great, the magic system is great, the world building is top notch, and the characters are so much fun to hang around. The mysteries are compelling. There's not many complaints that I have about this book. There's a lot I want to get to in the spoiler sections, but honestly, for the non-spoiler section, read it. It's a great book. Read Mistborn, The Final Empire. It's awesome. All right. So I'm gonna go from thing to thing of what I liked about this book. To start with, the characters. You have your two main characters, Vin and Kelsier, and I actually like Kelsier here a lot more than I do in future books. He's not that infuriating. He gets infuriating. Don't you worry. By the time we get to Era 2, and I'm not a big fan of Era 2 Kelsier, but and I'm not the biggest Kelsier fan, even in Secret History, to many extents, but in the original Mistborn, he's not bad. Yeah, he's got that arrogance, he's got that ego on him, but he's a relatively fun character. He genuinely cares for Vin, and I actually really like Kelsier in this book. I think he works really well as his older mentor. He provides some great humor to the novel. And his experiences are really compelling. I actually really like Kelsier here. Obviously, the highlight is Vin. Vin is such an amazing character. Her character progression, how she grows and changes, and starts to accept it into her role is really awesome. Ironically, at some points, acting almost as a moral compass for the crew, with how she treats at least noblemen compared to Doxson and Kelsier. Well, compared to Kelsier, Doxson may not like them, but he doesn't like wanton murder them like Kelsier does. But acting as that moral compass for the crew is pretty awesome. And just her character is amazing. It's so well written. How she grows and changes and develops over the course of the novel. I really love how I love Vin. I think she's a really great character. I think she has decent. She has pretty good chemistry with Elend. I think she's part of the reason this book works as well as it does. That she anchors the book in such an amazing way. When it comes to the side characters, they kind of fall into two camps. I think that you have the fun, humorous side characters, and I think that Ham, Breeze, Clubs, all of those characters, right? They're functional to the story, but they're primarily there to provide this lighthearted nature and to help get Vin out of her shell. And they work really well for that. They're funny, they're competent, and they're just they're a delight to read. You then have the characters who are more plot focused. I think Elend, Sazed, and Marsh are in that element. Though Marsh actually kind of leans more towards foreshadowing, with what we learn about about hemorrhology in future Mistborn books. He actually has great foreshadowing for that. Sazed is just a perfect example of a plot-focused side character. Yeah, he has his humorous moments, and he has those moments where he acts more for foreshadowing, especially in the ferrochemistry. But Sazed's character, you love him here. I ironically like him even more in future books. Sazed is such a fun character. And I think he has really great chemistry as a different kind of mentor for Vin. Elend, I like Elend. He's not my favorite character in the novel by any stretch, but he's a good love interest for Vin. I think he has decent chemistry with her, and he's fine. He's fun. Then when you come to the antagonists, you actually don't have any faced antagonists. You kind of have the noblemen, the noblemen, the inquisitors, the obligators. I guess the one faced antagonist is the Lord Ruler. And I think all of them are very effective in their own ways. I think that especially with the nobleman, that internal conflict with Vin is really sells a lot of this novel. As she's rapidly changed who she is and how she acts, and now in that vulnerable moment, the nobles come in, and I think that it adds this conflict to her character that really adds to it and intenses the emotional stakes in the novel. The Inquisitors are just really good as a big scary villain. They are powerful, they are dangerous, and wow, they are very effective villains. They are some of the scariest effective henchmen of bad guys. They're just of how powerful they are. And in addition to talking about, once again, the foreshadowing in this book is amazing. I love the foreshadowing in this book because of what it clues you into in future installments, especially with hemorrhology. Hemorrhology is such an interesting magic system, and it's foreshadowed so well in this novel. The Obligators are, they're kind of a background villain, let's be real. And then the Lord Ruler, the Lord Ruler as a villain is fine in this book. He's kind of the generic big bad guy that the heroes have to upset. You don't really see him for the majority of the novel. So he's fine in this book. The Lord Ruler shines in the next two. It really does. He doesn't come back alive, but somehow the next two books make him an even greater antagonist. And wow. But for this book at least, he's a serviceable big bad guy, Sauron-esque character, Sauron Voldemort-esque character, who's evil to the position of the crew to be evil. And he's not that bad. He's okay. Okay, when it comes to plot and story, it's great. I think the heist works well. I think that, the small pieces clicking into place, and as everything kind of comes together, it's just a really enjoyable read, and it keeps it exciting. The little events and details that happen throughout keep it exciting through the entire runtime of the story, and it's just kind of exciting to get to see good people, competent people do things well. I think Mistborn is very effective at that, and overall, the plot and the story are they're well paced. It's a lot of fun, and it's a really enjoyable part of the story. But let's be real. The reason that Mistborn is phenomenal is its magic system. It is one of my favorite magic systems, hands down. Period. If I had to choose a magic system to be like a real magic system, not like a nonsense magic system, it would probably be Allomancy. It's a sick magic system. Either Allomancy or Ferrochemistry, one of the two. They're sick. They really are. And the way that Sanderson is able to explain how they work in info dumping sequences that aren't boring to read. Info dumping can often be pretty boring, but explaining Allomancy isn't. The subtle nuances and ways that it's used, I think allomantic fighting is some of the most interesting and exciting fighting in fantasy. I think it's one of the best marriages of combat and magic that I've seen. It is just amazing. The on one-on-one duels, whether it be practice duels against Kelsier or real duels against other Mistborn, especially in the later parts of the book with Vin. I think Sanderson uses Allomancy so effectively. Even in this first book, this is his first outing with Allomancy. It's one of his first Cosmere books, and yet it is amazing just how this system works and what he's able to do with it to up the stakes of everything, of not only fight scenes but also just the emotional Allomancy and being able to and also Copper being able to, not Copper, opposite. Not brass. Not tin. What's the opposite of copper? I don't know. Whatever the opposite of copper is, bronze. Bronze. Being able to find allomancers. It's a really well done magic system. There's a reason I think it's so beloved. Allomancy's just sick. It's a cool magic system used really effectively in Mistborn. And I think that's the big highlight of Mistborn. It's just Allomancy. It's that good. It's really awesome. Despite all of my love for it, there are some things that I will critique a little bit about Mistborn. One of them is Sanderson did say about writing the book that he wished he hadn't gone as dark as he did in Mistborn. He has talked about how because of kind of the grimdark trend in fantasy, he attempted to add a little bit to this book. And I agree with him, saying it's probably the weakest aspect of the book. I don't think it adds that much to the story, and I think it adds that much to the story, and I don't think it is as effective as it would have been without it, right? Obviously, it helps undercut and contextualize Dockson's hatred of the nobility, but I think that there are ways to do that without the necessarily more grim, dark elements or darker elements of the story that kind of almost mess with Vin's perspective and Vin's emotional journey. Because Kelsier, you can get why he hates noblemen, because I think you could have very easily had it that they hate noblemen because of the more violent aspects and the violence aspects and the oppression of the Ska, rather the other reasons, especially with Dockson, why they hate the nobility. And then it also gives you an avenue, especially with Elend, to still have your sympathetic nobility for the internal conflict with Vin. And that's one issue that I do have with the book. That's one thing I didn't really love. But beyond that, I struggle to find flaws with this book. There's little things, little moments that aren't necessarily my favorite, and I think there are some flaws, and you can tell that it's early Cosmere. But honestly, I love Mistborn. I think it is just a phenomenal book, and it's a book that I really enjoyed reading again. It's a book that I think that gets better on a second read through, and highly recommend. Obviously, if you're watching the spoiler section, you probably have read Mistborn, but highly recommend it, and highly recommend a reread if you've already read the book and haven't gone back and reread it yet. Just really amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, so thank you so much for watching. Currently reading Before We Are Hanged, and so review of that out soon. The Babel review is coming as well, and then we'll see when other books get in at the library. I'm waiting on The Next Wheel of Time, waiting on a couple other books that are coming in from the library. So look out for those coming soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.